It's that time again. A new game is about to be completed, and at the end of a game there's an end boss. And I don't like end bosses, I don't like making them, I don't like encountering them in games, but they're part of games, and this game could do with an end boss. So we're gonna make a very simple end boss. It's not gonna be extremely difficult or hard to beat, because I hate that. So it's gonna be a funny, interesting end boss, and I'm drawing it, sketching it, pixel art, animating it, coding it. And I'm gonna show you all of that process after the intro. While I'll talk a little bit over the process and the design decisions behind it, and after the intro, we're gonna create an end boss. We're gonna create an end boss. Alright, so the first step is pretty simple. I'm sketching it out on paper. It doesn't have to be very detailed. I just want a rough idea of what I want to create and what I need to create, so that I can then create it in pixel art. So my idea was already set from the beginning when I started working on this game. An end boss that has like pillars on the screen, and you attack those pillars before you can attack the actual creature. And I'm also basing this alien blob type thing on the exact same alien in Space Grunts 2, because we're tying all these games together. So that's a bit what we're gonna create, an alien blob. So I'm gonna start with the tentacles, and they will be wrapped around an energy core mining apparatus that's already in the game. So we're using that apparatus as a base, and then we're just gonna create a tentacle around it. First we'll do some flat colors just to get the shapes, and then start adding a little bit highlights and shadows around it. And that's all going to be the easy step, because we'll also be having to animate all of this. So I'm sticking to some very basic colors. I have one palette for the whole game, and I'm not deviating from that palette. So all the colors I'm using are coming from that palette only and nothing else. And all the aliens in this game are this pinkish, purplish type stuff from the alien blob, and that's just going to be wrapped around everything. So the next step is animating it, and there are a lot of animation tools out there that you can use for animations. It works. If you like it, try them. I think you can do a lot better with those tools, but I like to animate stuff manually, so I'm just doing it manually, just changing shapes around a little bit. And most of this happens in my head, trying to understand what happens with stuff and how it should be moving and how it could be moving, and then hope for the best, pretty much. Once we have some animations there, it's time to add some code, and the first thing I do is just set up this tentacle type thing. So initialization code, and make sure that it can animate, so that I can actually see it in game and have it animated and see if it actually fits and looks okay or good enough. And then we can move on to the more interesting stuff later. But for now, just show it on screen. Now, there's a lot of ways to create monster logic or game AI or whatever you want to call it. I just use very simple state machines. So very simple stuff, from animating it to dying to getting killed to hunting down a player, stuff like that. It's all just very simple states. Nothing fancy, just simple code, because it's easy to maintain and it's easy to create and build. And at some point I'm not going to look at this code anyway. I'm not going to reuse it in other games. So it doesn't have to be the ultimate code, it just needs to run and work for what it has to do in this game, and then we move on. Alright, so the tentacle is now animated and in the game. Next is creating the blob, the main part of this boss battle. So starting with an outline just to get the shape, and then we start coloring it flat colors, add some shade to it, add some details to it, until it looks good. I usually don't have a plan going in. It's just the sketch I made at the start of the video, and now we're just trying to recreate that sketch and make it look pretty and interesting. The original blob shape is funny, but I thought it could use some tentacles. Of course, the problem now is going to be animating all those tentacles. A little bit of extra work, but I think it looks better than just having it blobby and oozing and blobbing and stuff. And for this animation, it's also just trying to figure out how stuff could move and can move. And I can always add more frames in between, so it can look a little bit rough right now, and maybe I can polish it, and maybe I'll add 1 or 2 extra frames eventually. But for now, I just want something on screen, something animated, something to look at, and something to work with. I really like animating blobby stuff because it's pretty simple to animate. It all either expands or it shrinks. So by alternating that here and there on his body, you get some blobby oozing stuff going on, and luckily the tentacles aren't that hard to animate either. So it's just creating a couple of layers, creating a couple of images, and do a lot of checks to see if things still look okay when we're animating between 2 frames. And again, this is all very rough. We can always go in and change details if it doesn't look good or something sticks out that shouldn't. We can always go back in and we can add frames. So it's just getting a rough animation up there and add it to the game. And for this monster, the same thing goes for the code. Just get some initialization up and running, get it animated, get it on the screen, see if it looks okay, if it fits with everything around it. And in this case, we can actually add a couple of light effects to its body, just like it's putting out a little bit of light around it, which always enhances things and makes it a little more interesting to see and look, and it also highlights the area of the boss. So hopefully that will also catch the player's eye and understand that that's something of an important thing, because it's more bright than other stuff around it, and it just looks pretty. Alright, that's the boss animated on screen, tentacles animated and on screen. All we need to do now is tie it all up into a level and 1 challenge and have it interesting in the game. I didn't record all those steps and phases because that's just a lot of work and figuring out and trying stuff, and I also forgot to record while doing it, and it would have been a video of a couple of hours because at this point I had it animated and done, but all the hard stuff was still to be done. So eventually I ended up with an interesting monster. You now have the tentacles. You need to bring batteries to the tentacles so that the power cord they are wrapped around will somehow electrify it, go with it. And if you do that enough time at all the tentacles, the boss becomes vulnerable and you can shoot down the boss, and this is how it looks. Alright, that's it. We have a boss, fully animated, working, functioning. It was a pretty interesting week working on this. I don't like bosses, like I said at the beginning. It's But anyway, the game has a boss. It's pretty easy to complete it. It's more challenging to get this far in the game. So that's it for this week's video, I guess. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Hey, I'm Boss Goffer. I had to create an end boss. So that's what I did. And all the pixel art and the animating and